The night was bitterly cold in New York City. The streets glittered with holiday lights, yet for those who had no home, the beauty of the season meant nothing. Marcus, a 12-year-old black boy, sat on the edge of a park bench, shivering beneath his tattered hoodie. His stomach growled, but hunger was something he had grown used to. Marcus had been homeless for nearly 2 years, ever since his mother passed away from illness and his father disappeared, leaving him to fend for himself. The shelter system had failed him, and so he survived by gathering scraps, sleeping under bridges, and holding on to the one thing he still had, hope. As the clock struck midnight, Marcus rubbed his cold hands together and glanced at the empty street. Suddenly, the sound of screeching tires echoed in the distance. He turned just in time to see a sleek black limousine crash into a lamppost across the street. Smoke hissed from the hood, and the driver's side door flew open. Marcus hesitated. Normally, he stayed away from trouble, especially with the police often chasing homeless kids like him. But something inside urged him to run toward the wreck. When he reached the limousine, his eyes widened in shock. Inside the back seat was a man in his late 40s, dressed in a fine suit and expensive watch, clearly a wealthy man. Beside him were 2 young children, identical twins no older than Marcus himself, trapped and crying. The man was unconscious, his head slumped to the side, blood trickling down his temple. "Help us, please. Daddy won't wake up," one of the twins screamed through the broken glass. Marcus's heart pounded. He knew he couldn't just walk away. With trembling hands, he pulled at the door until it opened. The acrid smell of smoke filled the air. "Come on, we need to get out," Marcus shouted. The twins scrambled toward him, coughing, tears streaking their faces. Marcus guided them out one by one, making sure they didn't trip on the shards of glass. Then he turned his attention to their father. The man was heavy, far heavier than Marcus had ever tried to carry. But adrenaline surged through him. "You're not dying tonight," he muttered. Marcus pulled with all his strength, inch by inch dragging the unconscious man from the limousine. Just as he managed to pull him clear, a small explosion flared from the engine, flames licking the car. The boy fell backward, gasping, as the fire began to consume the vehicle. The twins clung to him, sobbing in fear. "What do we do? What if he dies?" Marcus knelt beside the billionaire and checked for breath the way he had once seen paramedics do. The man was alive, though his breathing was shallow. Marcus looked around. No one else was there. "Stay with me," Marcus whispered, pressing down on the man's chest like he remembered from a CPR poster at the subway. He pumped his hands against the man's sternum, pausing only to give air through his mouth. It was awkward and clumsy, but he refused to stop. Minutes felt like hours until finally the man coughed, a weak but undeniable sign of life. Marcus sat back, relief washing over him. "Daddy," the twins cried, hugging their father's limp hand. The man's eyelids fluttered, his gaze faintly focusing on Marcus. Though his voice was faint, he managed to croak, "You saved us." Marcus shook his head. "No, sir. I just couldn't leave you." Before more words could be exchanged, the sound of sirens filled the air. Police cars and an ambulance rushed to the scene. Paramedics quickly surrounded the billionaire, lifting him onto a stretcher, while officers pulled the twins to safety. Marcus stepped back into the shadows, ready to disappear. He had done his part. People like him weren't meant to stand among the rich or the powerful. But just as he turned, he felt a small tug on his sleeve. One of the twins had broken free from the paramedics. "Don't go," the boy whispered. "Please. You saved us." Marcus froze, unsure of what to say. For the first time in years, someone was looking at him not as a beggar, not as a burden, but as a hero. He had no idea that this night, this single act of courage, would change his life forever. The flashing red and blue lights painted the street in waves of color. Marcus stood frozen as the paramedics carried the unconscious billionaire into the ambulance. The twins were ushered inside too, still clutching each other's hands. Marcus thought it was time to slip away. After all, homeless kids like him didn't belong in the world of luxury cars and silk suits. He turned toward the alley, his worn sneakers crunching against the icy pavement. "Wait," a sharp voice called. Marcus looked back. One of the police officers was staring at him. "You, don't move. Did you see what happened?" Fear prickled his skin. He wanted to run, but the twin who had tugged on his sleeve earlier pointed toward him and shouted, "That's the boy who saved us. He saved Daddy." The officer blinked, suddenly less hostile. "Is that true?" Before Marcus could stammer a reply, the paramedic confirmed, "The kid's CPR kept him alive until we got here." Suddenly, all eyes were on Marcus. The officer's suspicion melted into something else, respect. A few bystanders who had gathered around began murmuring. A homeless kid saved a billionaire. That boy's a hero. Marcus's cheeks burned. He wasn't used to praise. Usually, the only words thrown his way were, "Get lost," or, "Don't loiter." One of the twins leaned out of the ambulance and yelled, "Please come with us." Marcus hesitated, but the officer gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Go on, son. You've earned it." For the first time in years, Marcus stepped into an ambulance, not as a patient, but as someone who mattered. At the hospital, Marcus sat quietly in the waiting area, the twins glued to his side. They told him their names, Caleb and Chloe. Their father, they explained, was Alexander Sterling, one of the most powerful businessmen in the country. His empire stretched from finance to technology, and he was known everywhere as a billionaire philanthropist. Marcus listened, overwhelmed. He had heard the name on TV, though never imagined he'd meet the man face to face, let alone drag him out of a burning car. Hours passed before a doctor approached. "Mr. Sterling will be fine. A concussion and some minor injuries, but thanks to quick action, his life was saved." The twins hugged Marcus tightly, and for a moment he forgot he was just a boy with no home, no family. But reality crept back. Once Mr. Sterling was awake, surely Marcus would be thanked politely, then sent back to the streets. That was how the world worked. People like Marcus helped, but they didn't belong in the lives of the rich. The next morning, Alexander Sterling opened his eyes in a hospital bed. He looked pale but alive, and his gaze immediately softened when it fell on Caleb, Chloe, and Marcus sitting beside them. "You," Alexander whispered, pointing weakly at Marcus. "You saved my children, and me." Marcus shuffled awkwardly. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Alexander said firmly, his voice regaining strength. "Not anyone. Most would have walked away. You risked your life for strangers." The twins chimed in. "Daddy, he has no home. He lives on the street. You can't let him go back there." Marcus's eyes widened. He hadn't told them about his life, he'd only admitted he had nowhere to sleep last night. Yet the children had understood. Alexander studied Marcus carefully. "Is this true?" Marcus lowered his head, ashamed. "Yeah, I don't got nobody. Been on my own a long time." Silence filled the room. Then Alexander said something Marcus would never forget. "Then from this moment forward, you're not on your own anymore." Marcus blinked. "Sir, you saved my family," Alexander said. "That makes you family too. Until we figure things out, you'll stay with us." The words felt unreal. Marcus wanted to believe them, but doubt gnawed at his chest. Was this just gratitude speaking? Would he really be welcomed into the life of a billionaire? 2 days later, Marcus found himself stepping out of a black SUV in front of a towering glass mansion on the Upper East Side. He gawked at the marble floors, the chandeliers, the sprawling staircase. It felt like stepping into a dream, or maybe a movie. Servants greeted the twins cheerfully, but when their eyes landed on Marcus, their smiles faltered. Whispers spread quickly. "Who's that boy? He looks homeless." Marcus felt the sting of judgment again. He tugged at his ragged hoodie, wishing he could disappear. But then Alexander appeared in the grand hall, walking slowly with a cane as he recovered. He put a hand on Marcus's shoulder and declared loudly, "This boy is the reason I'm alive. Treat him with the same respect you give me." The servants bowed their heads, murmuring apologies. Marcus's throat tightened. For the first time, someone powerful was standing up for him. Yet he couldn't shake the question burning in his mind. What place could a boy like him really have in a billionaire's world? The following weeks felt like stepping into another universe for Marcus. He went from scavenging scraps behind restaurants to waking up in a warm bed, with freshly washed clothes laid out for him. The mansion bustled with chefs, maids, and assistants, all of whom now treated him kindly after Alexander's stern declaration. But even as he adjusted, Marcus couldn't shake a gnawing unease. He didn't belong here. Every time he sat at the polished dining table, his hands trembled, afraid he'd use the wrong fork or spill juice on the spotless white cloth. The twins, Caleb and Chloe, tried their best to ease his worries. "You're one of us now," Chloe whispered one morning. "Yeah," Caleb added with a grin. "You're like our brother." Marcus smiled faintly. He liked the idea, but deep down, he wondered if their father truly meant it, or if Marcus was just a temporary guest until gratitude wore off. One evening, Alexander called Marcus into his private study. The room smelled of leather and old books, with shelves stretching to the ceiling. Alexander sat behind a massive oak desk, a stack of papers in front of him. Marcus, he began, his tone serious, I need to ask you something. Marcus fidgeted nervously. Yes, sir. Do you want to stay here, permanently? The word struck Marcus like a thunderbolt. He blinked rapidly. Permanently? You mean, live here? Alexander nodded. You saved my life and my children's. That kind of bravery can't be repaid with money alone. I want to give you what you've been missing, a home, a family, an education. Marcus's throat tightened. He thought of his mother, of all the nights he'd cried himself to sleep wishing for someone to care. Now, here was one of the richest men in America offering him everything he'd ever dreamed of. But fear crept in too. Why me? I'm just a nobody. What if I mess up? What if I don't fit in? Alexander stood, leaning on his cane, and walked around the desk. He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. You proved that you're somebody the moment you refused to walk away from that burning car. Courage, loyalty, compassion, those matter more than money or status. You fit in because you've already shown the heart of a sterling. Marcus's eyes welled with tears. No one had ever spoken to him like that. He nodded slowly. I want to stay. I want a family again. Alexander smiled warmly. Then it's settled. Word spread quickly across the city. News outlets picked up the story. Homeless boy saves billionaire and twins, adopted into sterling family. Cameras flashed outside the mansion, and suddenly Marcus was no longer invisible. Strangers wanted to shake his hand, reporters wanted his picture, and people on the street called him a hero. But fame was overwhelming. Marcus wasn't used to attention, and he struggled with the sudden spotlight. One day, when reporters crowded the mansion gates shouting questions, Marcus panicked and ran back inside, hiding in his room. That night, Alexander visited him. You don't owe the world anything, he said gently. You don't have to perform. Just be yourself. You're still Marcus, the boy who followed his heart. That's enough. Marcus exhaled shakily. For the first time, he believed it. Months passed. Marcus enrolled in a prestigious private school with Caleb and Chloe. At first, the other students whispered behind his back, that's the homeless kid who got lucky. But Marcus, remembering his mother's lessons about dignity, worked harder than anyone else. He studied late, played sports with determination, and earned respect through his kindness. One day, when a smaller student was being bullied, Marcus stepped in without hesitation. Leave him alone, he said firmly, standing his ground. The bullies backed off, and whispers shifted into admiration. He was no longer the homeless kid. He was Marcus Sterling, the boy who had already proven himself a hero. Years later, at a charity gala hosted by Alexander Sterling, Marcus stood tall in a tailored suit, Caleb and Chloe at his side. He had grown into a confident young man, educated and strong. Reporters still remembered his story, but now they spoke of his achievements, his grades, his speeches about helping the homeless, his determination to give back. On stage, Marcus took the microphone. His voice was steady, filled with conviction. I was once a boy with nothing, no family, no home, no future. But one night, I chose not to walk away. That choice gave me not just a second chance at life, but a family who believed in me. Today, I promise to use this gift not for myself alone, but for every child out there who feels forgotten. Because if I've learned one thing, it's this: heroes aren't born in mansions. Sometimes, they rise from the streets. The audience erupted in applause, Alexander wiping tears from his eyes. Caleb and Chloe hugged him proudly. And Marcus, once a nameless boy on a cold bench, smiled. He had found where he belonged, not just in the Sterling mansion, but in the world. He was no longer invisible. He was family. He was home.